So I've started the YouTube stream.
Okay, so I can begin?
Yep, anytime.
All right. Good afternoon and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. My name is John Blatherwick and I will be chairing this hearing today. With me are my fellow panel members, Bonnie Oak-Charon, Stan Wilder, Heather McLean, and Michael Wildman. Please take note that this video conference is being live streamed on YouTube. The video will be archived along with today's agenda on the city's website. Before we begin, we have a few items to outline for your information. While the issues surrounding development in the city are broad, our mandate is quite limited. The committee cannot consider aspects of the proposal that are not related to the required variances: noise, pollution, property maintenance, property values, prosecution for illegal construction, personal comments regarding neighbors, agents, or applicants, additional variances without proper notice. If there is an identified need for an additional variance or variances, including an increase in the extent of the relief required, a recirculation on the application is required. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each application was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. Today, I will be administering oaths to all of the agents and or their applicants regarding each of the items before us. Regarding quorum, if this is lost during the hearing due to technical difficulties, the proceedings will be paused to allow time for the resolution of the issue. Failing the ability to reinstate quorum, hearing of the items remaining will resume at the outset of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the committee. The date confirmation will be with the coordinator. In terms of the hearing process, listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Note that the committee members have reviewed the application materials prior to this hearing and any written submissions received in support or in opposition. In addition, the committee will hear today oral submissions from any interested parties as part of our proceedings. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions from the members where clarification may be needed. The public submissions portion of the hearing will then begin, and any interested parties will be invited to make their submissions to the committee. Panel members may then ask follow-up questions where added clarification may be required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we will ask you to do the following. Start with stating your name and municipal address for the record. We may ask you to spell your name. Then begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. You may ask questions, but please direct them only to the chair. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the committee's discretion. Once all interested parties have had an opportunity to address the panel, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be closed. The committee will then make an oral decision to either grant or deny the application. The committee may also choose to reserve its decision. In such case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following the adjournment of the public hearing. In either case, the committee will send within 10 days of its decision and to all the parties and those who have requested it, a written decision that sets out the reasons for the decision. All decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period during which the decision can be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal for a fee. Items of business before we begin. Are there any declarations of interest for any of the members regarding this morning's panel, today's panel, this afternoon, or this evening's panel, panel 3?
None here.
No.
No, no interest. We have no minutes to confirm. We understand that there may be an adjournment request for item 5, 250 Byron. Is there an adjournment request for that application? Hearing none, I'm assuming that there is no adjournment request for Byron. So we shall move on to the to the regular scheduled agenda. And we'll deal first with item number 1, 1038 Gladstone. And with the agent or applicant, please identify them so that I can administer the oath. Should we move to item 2?
Laura? Oh, I lost her. My apologies. Oh, she's back.
Hello. Oh. Sorry, I'm having a hard time connecting here. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of reverberation though.
Okay.
You want to move a little closer to the mic.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, could you identify yourself, please?
Yes, sorry, it's Laura Hands from Laura Hands Design.
And your address, Miss Hands?
My address is 27 Maitland Street in Richmond, Ontario.
Okay. Right. Before we begin this item, I'm going to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to the item. Ms. Hands, this is an application for minor variances to permit reduced lot width, lot area, easterly and westerly side yard setbacks, and a reduced amenity space. It is proposed to renovate the interior of the existing 3-story duplex dwelling and convert it to a 3-unit dwelling. So if you would like to make a presentation, please.
All right. Our proposed project has a few minor variances. One would be the reduced lot width. The minimum lot width required is 12 meters, and we are requesting a 7.62 meter lot width.
All right.
Okay. My comments to the committee of from the Committee of Adjustment has no concerns with the lot width, as well as we are requesting a reduced lot area of 216 square meters, where our minimum lot area is to be 360 square meters for a 3-unit dwelling.
Okay.
However, if the abutting lot contains a driveway, and if that were included, our lot width would be 10.67 meters, and our lot area would raise to 302 square meters.
But that's not your property.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Is what your client owns.
Yes. So we also have a reduced side yard, an easterly side yard setback of 1.14 meters, and a reduced westerly side yard of 0.43 meters.
And the committee understands that that's an existing condition?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And then our last minor variance would be for amenity space.
Okay.
So in the rear yard, we would like to add amenity space for 34 square meters, where the bylaw requires a minimum of 45. But we would like to gain some space by using the second floor deck that is existing, as well as creating a third floor deck for the third unit up on the third floor. So we would gain an additional 13.98 square meters on the second floor and an additional 14.60 square meters for the second and third floor decks.
That's 28 square meters of additional amenity space not at grade.
That is correct, yes.
Do we have elevations for your project?
Yes, there were elevations that were submitted with the whole package. Oh, yeah, there you'll see. You're looking at the front, well, and the rear elevation.
Okay. And side elevations?
That's correct. So that would be the westerly side here that you're showing.
So the existing deck is at the second floor level?
Yes, that's correct.
And the new deck-
However, oh, go ahead.
and the deck-
However, we're going to be creating a third floor deck as well, because this is going to pose as a secondary exit for the third floor unit.
All right. And what about privacy screening for that new deck on the third floor?
So privacy screening will go up on the west side. On the west, yes, this side. A privacy screen will go up on the third floor deck.
And how tall will that screen be?
That screen will be 5 feet in height.
Right. Okay. And only on the west side, not on the east?
This is correct. We're quite a ways from the property line on the east side, and the privacy screen will be required on the west side on the third level deck.
There's no privacy screen on at the existing second floor deck level?
No, so that screen, or sorry, that deck.
Is there an intent to put a privacy screen on that particular deck, the one that's existing?
Yes,
And the same height as the one for the third floor?
that is correct.
Okay, all right. So in your opinion, your application meets all the 4 tests of the Planning Act?
Yes, it does.
And how would that do that?
Just one moment. So I just need to go run and get my file for test. Sorry about that. My variances are minor. All of them, except for the amenity space, is existing conditions. My variances are appropriate for this development and use of the property. No new setbacks are being requested. Only existing conditions are going to remain. So the intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained. And the official plan is also maintained because we're going to construct a legal triplex to maintain growth within the urban area.
Okay. You were aware of the comments from Building Code Services to obtain a permit prior to construction,
Yes,
and Hydro Ottawa maintaining clearances to the overhead area,
yes,
and from the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, their approvals and permits required private to construction and or demolition of any buildings and or structures and prior to the issuance of any municipal building permits or approvals. So they request that they are circulated with all proposed changes and development to the subject lands. You're aware of MTO's request.
yes. I emailed the Committee of Adjustment and they sent me all of the paperwork.
Okay.
Of everything you just stated.
We also note that there is a letter from the Hintonburg Community Association in support of your proposal.
Yes, I had met with them some time ago, possibly about February. In one of their meetings, I brought the drawings and explained to them everything that we have discussed already today, and they were in favor of what we're planning on doing with the building.
Okay. As a condition of approval, the privacy screening on both decks, 5 foot on the west side.
Yes,
Applicants, your applicants okay with that? You impose that? We're also looking at tying the variances C and D to the life of the building. That's the reduction in the side yards and the reduced amenity space requirement that you're requiring. And should we approve, we'll be approving this this application according to plans filed. Any of the members have any comments or questions on this application?
No.
No. No. Are we prepared to vote on the application?
Yes.
All in favor of the application with the condition for the privacy screening and being approved according to plans filed with tying variances C and D to the life of the building? All in favor?
Yes.
Is that unanimous? All right. All right. Your application is approved. Good luck with your project.
thank you very much. Have a great day.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
How do I turn this off, Jason? Oh, I think they kicked me out.
All right. Next application we'll hear is item 2 on the agenda, 541 Rideau Street. We have the agent identify themselves so that we can administer the oath.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. It's Miguel Tremblay from Fotan Consultants.
Tremblay.
How are you?
Just fine, thank you. Surviving in electronic land.
I'm just happy to be back working with the committee.
Yes, and we're happy to see you. All right, regarding the oath on the stat deck, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tremblay. This application for a minor variance is to permit an enclosed penthouse amenity area to exceed the 29-meter maximum building height. The 9-story mixed-use building currently under construction will include commercial uses at grade and 102 residential uses on the floors above. So if you'd like to proceed with your presentation, Mr. Tremblay.
Okay, and I'll just, yeah, I'll start on this slide. So the 0.3 acre property is on the north side of Rideau Street. It's kind of a bit of a panhandle configuration that has more frontage along Coburg, which is a collector road intersecting with Rideau Street. And the property has about 31 meters of frontage on Rideau. It's in very close proximity to McDonald Gardens Park. Next slide, please. The site is already next to an existing 13-story OCH building. That's the teal building to the right and to the east. And you could also see the start of the Richcraft 9-story building on the south side of Rideau Street at 590 Rideau Street. Rideau in the last few years has been subject to a secondary plan and CDP. Recognizing that there's been a considerable amount of development interest. You may recall that there are two 25-story towers by Trinity at the corner of Rideau and Chapel, and there's another 14-story building coming in by Richcraft just further to the west of this site. So in large part, that's because Rideau Street is a transit priority corridor with dedicated bus lanes. Next slide, please. Just in terms of history for this project, so a zoning bylaw amendment was approved in October 2018. To be clear for the committee's benefit, the rooftop amenity space, although slightly smaller in that version, had consistently been shown on those plans. The issue, though, is that the zoning details that were approved by council did not fully reflect the rooftop amenity. It wasn't picked up by both staff and us, and we were relying at the time heavily on section 64, which in fact does not permit rooftop amenity space to project above the maximum height of the building. So site plan approval was issued in October 2019, about a year later. But the rooftop the rooftop amenity space was removed from the site plan so that building permits could be issued following site plan approval, with the understanding that at a later time we would have to seek a minor variance to construct the rooftop amenity area as previously shown. Also, given that the zoning is still relatively fresh and still not 2 years old, we had to seek approval from Planning Committee and City Council to be able to apply to the variance. So in November 2019, there was a staff report detailing what the variances were going to be, and it was approved unanimously by Planning Committee and City Council, and we were entitled to submit these applications. The next step, if the variances are granted, because the building is well under construction now, all the below grade works are done and it's starting to come out of the ground. There'll be a small adjustment to the building permit to show the enclosed amenity space. The building is actually very heavy in terms of amenity space. There's about 330 meters of required space, and that was working back from what the applicants were proposing. A good part of that is communal amenity space, and that includes the space that is shown. Next slide, please. It includes both amenity space on the ground level, and then all of the brick area you can see in that. This is not the site plan. I chose the building permit drawing just because it's a lot more detailed as to what's going on the roof. So I selected this plan, but all of the brick area amounts to about 129 square meters of rooftop amenity space. So the rooftop amenity space is still permitted under the current site plan, current zoning, and current building permit. But the desire now is to enclose the blue portion, which is about 90 square meters. And it would be immediately abutting and connected to the rooftop mechanical penthouse. So all of the white that's enclosed there is all part of the rooftop mechanical, which is actually larger than the the area that we're proposing for the amenity space. You remember there was an OCH building, so that is to the right on your screen. The enclosed area of the amenity space would be about 6.4 meters from the edge of the building, which also coincides with the easterly property line. And then it would be about 15 meters to the rear property line. So if you think back of the graphic that I showed of the building elevation, it's unlikely that anyone, well, it's more than unlikely that anybody would even see the area of the enclosed amenity area, given the perspectives of the building. Truly, the only people that are going to be able to see it are the people in the OCH building on the upper floors. And then next slide, please. So this is the elevation on Rideau Street. Again, it's seen at a vantage point that no one else will see, but the orange area corresponds with the area that's going to be enclosed, proposed to be enclosed, and you can see that it's the same height as the abutting mechanical penthouse. The mechanical penthouse runs to the west. It includes those little beige sheltered areas and even a projection above and beyond that. But the intent is to simply run the roof line of the mechanical penthouse, incorporate it into the architecture of the mechanical penthouse. So it'll be roughly at a height of 4.8 meters, which is the height of the abutting mechanical penthouse. In terms of the four tests, both the secondary plan and the OP in this case support 9-story buildings on this site and taller buildings in the rest of the Rideau Street corridor, and lower buildings at different times. The area of the amenity space is not habitable space. It will have a washroom and a sink for food preparation and the use of the area, but it's not intended to be an additional floor. And actually, when council originally considered the zoning bylaw amendment back in 2018, the rooftop mechanical was shown on those plans. So council on 2 occasions now, because both when they approved the zoning in 2018 and then when they allowed us to move forward and submit for the minor zoning or minor variance rather, considered it again and felt it was appropriate and still maintain the intent of the OP for a 9-story building. This is just an accessory structure that contributes to overall a better building. The zoning, in terms of compliance with the intent of the zoning, the rooftop mechanical penthouse is permitted as a projection without any limitations, and the area of the rooftop amenity space that's not covered is also permitted in the zoning, and our zoning requires a minimum of 129 meters on the rooftop anyways. This is an attempt to mesh those two notions of the mechanical penthouse and the amenity space and create better space for the residents. In terms of, is it desirable? It's enclosing a certain amount of the rooftop amenity space is actually less intrusive to abutting properties because it will help. There's always a certain level of noise, I suppose, that's associated with these rooftop patios. This allows for it to be a little less intrusive potentially to other properties without any visual adverse impacts because, again, with the exception of maybe the folks in the OCH building, no one will ever know it's there. And in terms of, is it minor in nature? My intent is always to measure whether it's minor in terms of impacts, and I can't distinguish, nor does staff, any adverse impacts on abutting properties. So, anyways, that's my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions.
You mentioned that the mechanical cap was approximately 4.8 meters above, higher than the deck. Is that an actual height? Is that an approximate height?
No, I measured it from the building permit plans.
Okay, so if we approve this application for a minor variance for a rooftop amenity area that exceeds the 29-meter height limited by 4.8 meters.
I think that's reasonable.
because quite frankly, I think myself and the rest of the committee members would like to see a number.
That's fine.
All right.
I think that's a good approach.
Yeah, well, versus 5 floors.
Hmm?
Versus 5 floors. Anyway, do any of the members have any questions regarding this application?
No.
No. Mr. Wildman, no. Ms. McLean? Mr. Wilder? No, okay.
Excuse me, Chair, Ms. McLean has her hand up for a
Okay.
question.
Go ahead, Ms. McLean.
Oh, I can't hear her.
Because she's muted. Try now, Heather.
I'll ask the question again then. Is the enclosed rooftop amenities area 90 square meters?
It is.
So could we amend the application to put that figure in, I guess?
If the committee would like to, I mean, that's consistent with the plans that we have on file.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we slightly modify this request, would be to permit a 90 square meter enclosed rooftop amenity area to extend 4.8 meters higher than the 29 meter building height. Is that okay with you, Mr. Tremblay?
It is, yes.
Okay. All in favor of this application for variance?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody in favor? Mr. Tremblay is obviously in favor. All right, your application's approved. Good luck with the project.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Next application we'll hear is item number 3, 412 Churchill. And I believe Ms. Dunstone is the agent. Or Mr. Dunstone, sorry.
Are you able to see me?
Yes, I am.
Um,
And I'd have to administer the oath first, Mr. Dunstone.
right.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear.
Thank you, Mr. Dunstone. Right, this application is an application for minor variance to permit an outdoor commercial patio with a seating capacity of 20 persons to be located 22.3 meters from a residential zone without a screen or structure separating it from a lot in the residential zone. And this application is for 412 Churchill Avenue North. Before you proceed with your application, Mr. Dunstone, we have one question. Has this patio already been built?
It's actually been existing for about 12 to 15 years. And what happened recently is the patio underwent a facelift. There was no alteration or structural changes to the piers or supports. So basically, essentially new wood. But for all intents and purposes, the patio has existed for many years.
And that was a legal patio that existed for many years?
Not sure. The reason we bring a variance today is because we're applying for a liquor license in a number of municipal approvals now kick in, as you know. We do have a letter and stamp drawing from an engineer, which shows the patio is sound and built in accordance with building code.
Well, if you'd like to proceed with your presentation, Mr. Dunstone.
Thank you. So we have patio at the south side of Equator Coffee Shop on the west side of Churchill. You enter the patio at grade off Churchill. A patio operating with restaurant obviously meets the zoning bylaw, which currently it doesn't. Residential lot. We are proposing, as you mentioned, 20 patio, fairly subdued hours of operation. For instance, in line with the hours of operation of the cafe currently, which are 7 a.m. to about 6 to 7 p.m. nightly. I'm sorry, 11 p.m. Between the months of April and October, or patio season, in other words.
So which time frame is it during the day? Is it closing at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night? Or is it closing at 11?
11.
And that's 7 days a week?
7 days.
We have a frozen feed. You still hear me, Mr. Dunstone?
I'm here.
Yeah, because we lost you there for a second. So the hours of operation are up till 11, 6, what time again? Till what time again?
7 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week.
Okay. And you intend to serve liquor on that patio?
Yeah. The lighting will be very minimal and very subdued, like wall lighting, just for enough lighting for safety purposes. Music as well will be very subdued and will close at the time of, or will cease at the time of patio closing.
You have a design for this patio? What's it gonna look like?
Everything I do, everything's been filed with the committee.
Okay.
And
That's the site plan right now?
that's right. That's the engineer's drawing of the patio. If you have additional file plans, I can show you. So this is just the structure of the patio.
And the walls on the periphery of the patio are how high?
They are 36. The railings surrounding the patio are 36 inches high.
Is that going to be a solid wall or a solid fence around, or fence, or is that going to be open?
They're spindle railings.
And your lighting is going to be attached where?
To the cafe, and in the top left photograph, you'll see the exterior wall of the cafe. Lighting will may be attached to that wall. It could be table lamps, but basically what I wanted to get across is that it will be very minimal lighting. So there, as you can see, a screen at the westerly side of the patio in the bottom left photograph. We didn't want to put a screen on the east side or the Churchill side or the south side of the patio, because that would really obstruct patrons' view of its surroundings, and it'd likely even be hard to tell it was a patio. That's why we're seeking the variance of 75 meters without a screen.
Right. And how close is the nearest residential property to the patio?
It is 22.3 meters to the closest residential zone. And so that would be to the southeast of the patio. There was a number of residential addresses for which we dropped off flyers in their mailbox, and that's captured in my cover letter. That was on October 10th that we flyered the 4 residents that may have the most impact to a patio, and we haven't heard. We didn't receive any feedback from any residents.
And these dwelling units are on Danforth Avenue?
No, they're on Byron Avenue. 2 are on Byron Avenue. 2 are on Byron Place. Now the
All right.
right. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, but I did consult the planning office, and they saw no immediate issues or concerns, I guess, but did recommend the 70.
Okay. What about sound reproduction?
There will be light music. There will be no live bands or heavy amplification or bass content music. And again, all music will cease at the time of closing. And I should mention that the cafe sometimes closes as early as 6 p.m. And when the cafe is closed, the patio will be closed as well. So the patio is always basically going to be operating in connection with the cafe. But on fair weather evenings or events or whatnot, we just wanted to seek to ask for the flexibility of being permitted to stay open till 11 p.m. If that clarifies things further.
Okay. So you said light music, as in what?
Speaker.
That's
Yeah.
Not outside?
That's right. Yeah.
And your months of operation?
April 1st to October 31st.
Standard patio season.
Yeah, such as it is these days.
Okay, the maximum number of patrons on the patio?
20 persons.
You see that changing if you get your liquor license?
No, that'll be governed by the building code, and it's essentially we see essentially half of the indoor capacity. So based on the washrooms inside the cafe, so it's never going to be increased from 20 people.
Okay.
If I
Said
could,
you're- Okay,
Sorry.
continue. Go ahead.
I want to touch on a couple other points. In terms of the character of the neighborhood, Churchill Avenue, as you know, is a major arterial road. Lots of traffic, and in some areas, particular area, 4 lanes of traffic separate the patio from the residential zone to the east. There's also lots of precedent for of other patios in the immediate neighborhood as well. Licensed patios, both rooftop patios and surface level patios. For that and a number of other reasons, the reasons I could expand upon, the patio I think is a very compatible addition to the neighborhood and will be well received.
Are there any residential units in the building that the cafe is located in?
No, that's office space up above.
Okay. So you've got office space above, you've got office space in the building to the north.
Correct.
You've got a restaurant kitty corner at 332 Richmond Road.
That's right.
You've got office space and old number 2 police station directly across the street.
Correct.
The building at the corner of Lincoln and Byron, right at the corner there is a commercial roofing company, I believe.
Yes, a contractor or.
Yep. 424, which is just south of Danforth, is a laundromat.
Correct. Yeah.
So the nearest residential property is exactly where I'm looking at my map.
Nearest residential property. Yeah. Let me see. I'm looking at my maps here too. So the nearest residents, as I mentioned, are on Byron Avenue, which is across across Churchill Avenue, obviously, to the south, to the southeast of the establishment, and you can see the although the red zone line, the red zoning line that you can see in this image, to the across Churchill Avenue, the first small square building, it appears to be a residence, but it's actually a commercial building. It's occupied by commercial interests and businesses. So the first, and I'm just pulling up my my screen as well. So the first impact residence would be 421 Byron Place. Sorry. So Byron Place being the street to the south of Byron Avenue, these are the most impacted, affected residents that were within the.
And how far away are they from the from your patio?
They are 97.7 meters. However, the resident, sorry, the zone immediately to the east of the property of the patio is also residential, and that has a distance of approximately 37.3 meters. Now, however, these the first two buildings, the first two squares that you see to the just I guess to the south of the red line, these are commercially occupied buildings, businesses, design companies. So although it's in a residential zone, there are no residents in that building. So I took it to be the first immediate residents, actual resident buildings, to be the buildings on Byron Place Avenue, or Byron Place to the south, and that being 325, or rather 474 Byron Place, 470 Byron Place, and then 325 Byron Avenue, and 21.
Is there anything more that you'd like to add to your application?
Well, I've in my application cover, I did address the 4 tests.
And if you wouldn't mind just reiterating that.
Sure. Very, it's a general zoning bylaw. A licensed cafe is a permitted use in this zone. I necessarily that a licensed patio should be operated in connection with this cafe. Also, the subdued and mild lighting and low background music will ensure that the intent of the bylaw is met to protect the peace and privacy of residential neighbors. In addition, as I mentioned, there are other examples of licensed patios in the immediate area as well. The variance maintains the general intent of the official plan. The traditional Main Street zone allows for a number of mixed uses, including restaurants, cafes, offices, and so on. It is the patio is fully accessible from the street and has a clearance opening to accommodate and so on. So accessibility obviously is a keynote in the variance is minor in nature. As I indicated earlier, there will be certain measures and controls over the conduct of the patio, namely music, lighting, the hours aligning with the indoor operation of the. And again, the restaurant or the patio would be operating in connection with a cafe, which is in that zone. As I indicated earlier, there is a significant amount of buffering between the residential zone to the southeast and the proposed patio. And finally, the variance is desirable in that it but with character of the neighborhood, very pedestrian use of the neighborhood, it will blend into the fabric of the neighborhood. So that I think it is a desirable variance.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dunstone. Ms. McLean, you have a question or a comment?
A couple of questions regarding the location of the patio. Can you confirm, Mr. Dunstone, that it's not occupying a required parking space in that lot?
No, all the parking meets the threshold of all businesses in that block, and the patio comes out at such, it's hard to explain, at such an extent of from the side of the building that essentially the parking starts immediately below. So you overlook the parking. And again, just to Pete, the patio has actually been there for quite a number of years, and there's to my knowledge never been any issues with parking either.
And there seems to be a stairway that leads down at the side into a parking space, or is there a little bit of a walkway there?
That's a walkway. There's curbs in the parking lot, I believe, which allows for a walkway.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess would you have any opposition to a condition that ties the patio into a cafe? Is there a side door from the cafe onto the patio, or how is that?
Yes, there is. So, for instance, one wouldn't have to go onto municipal roadway or sidewalk to enter the patio from the cafe, particularly if they have a beverage or what. You can exit the restaurant right onto the patio through that side door.
Okay, thank you. And then, Mr. Chair, I guess when we come to discuss conditions, I'd like to suggest that there be no amplified or live music or reproduced music on the patio. Thank you.
Thank you.
McLean. Mr. Wilder, you had a question, comment? We can't hear Mr. Wilder.
You just dealing with
please
the
start over,
ambient sound again. You mentioned that will there be occasions and that there'll be, other than ambient sound, that there might be some other forms of entertainment on that patio?
Westfest, where there's certain noise exemptions, but which are made under official application to the city. I can perhaps foresee that, but nothing ever out of the context of just very background.
Yeah, I heard what Ms. McLean said. I was going to suggest as a condition that the ambient music be limited to 9 a.m. to no later than 9 p.m. Wouldn't want to see it going on any earlier than 9 in the morning and no later than 9 p.m. in the evening. But I'm not sure how the others feel. It's my only comment.
I personally see a problem with that. But I think but on the basis of in the opinions of the landlord and the operators, they may in fact request the flexibility of being able to have background music up to 11 p.m. When the patio at its most absolute extent would close. So respectfully, I think I'd like to ask that ambient music continue till 11 p.m. I'm open to thoughts to that, though.
Mr. Wildman, you had a comment regarding noise?
So, I take.
No, I just feel that
Michael's on. Hang on, Stan.
sorry.
1 second.
I take the comments from the delegation that indicates that, it'll be ambient noise. And that there aren't residential units per se within a fairly close proximity. However, having some experience with noise studies and knowing how noise reverberates, I think I'm more comfortable with the suggestions of members McLean and Wilder to have some level of control. In the event that there is a change with respect to a residential unit, in the sense of they are permitted within about 20 some odd meters away. So I'm in agreement with members McLean and Wilder, just in case there, in the future there's a concern with reverberation of noise and what have you.
Okay. Yeah,
Breaking up. Can you repeat your statement?
yeah, it's Ainsley. I'll definitely relate that to the.
So for the as far as approving this application with conditions, I think we need to limit the number of patrons to 20, as you suggested in your report. The hours of operation 7 days per week, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. at the latest. That there shall be no obtrusive or spillover lighting in the patio. That the lighting levels will be kept low. You're not going to light it up like a runway at the airport. Screening, you said, is not necessary, and quite frankly, I don't see I don't think screening is absolutely necessary in this instance. Months of operation between April 1st and October 31st as a condition as well. But noise, quite frankly, I'm in agreement with Ms. McLean on saying no to outside music, either live or reproduced. And I need to hear from the other members on this. Ms. Oak Sharon, regarding noise on this patio or music reproduction.
I'm okay with the ambient style music. And I also agree with the limitation on the hours that has been discussed from 9 to 9.
Okay, so if we reduce to 9 hours or till 9 p.m. Mr. Wilder? You're muted again. Can't hear Mr. Wilder. You want to repeat yourself, Stan? I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I would, as I said before, I would support in terms of noise, the ambient music, and yet limited to the hours as a condition 9 to 9.
Yeah.
9 a.m., 9 p.m. Thank you.
All right.
Understood and fair enough. That's more than fair.
All right. So we can agree that members of the panel at a 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. limit on noise reproduction on the patio is acceptable, and that the music reproduction shall be ambient only and no live music to be allowed. And that would be one of the other, that would be the, I guess, the final condition.
Sorry, I missed that last condition.
That no live music.
No,
Ambient music only between 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and that the music levels are kept at a level that does not create an issue for nearby residents.
now live music, could that include like just acoustic on live music?
Live music is live music. No live music. You have a 20-person patio, you don't have a lot of room there for a band.
True. Fair enough.
All right. So all members in agreement that we allow this variance with the conditions as we have discussed. All in favor? All right, Mr. Your application has been approved, Mr. Dunstone, with the conditions on the patio use. Good luck with your project.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Very welcome. Thank you. So that's that for that. Okay. What's this from here? The next application we'll deal with is number 4 on the agenda, 464 Denbury. And I believe Mr. Mason is the agent for the project.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm going to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, it was.
You do swear? All right, thank you. All right. This application is for minor variances for reduced rear yard and front yard setbacks and reduced rear yard area to permit the construction of a new 2-story detached dwelling. The existing 1-story dwelling will be demolished. And if you'd like to proceed with your presentation, well, please proceed.
Absolutely. We are actually asking for an existing condition. The home that you see on the existing plans that were submitted.
There's a lot of reverberation right now. Could you move a little closer to the mic?
Absolutely.
Can't hear you at all.
Is this okay?
That's not great. Could you maybe turn the volume up a touch?
Give me 1 second and I'll make that happen. Don't have headphones that work for this. Sorry about that. Just turning up the microphone here. How is it now?
That's slightly better, but not great.
Worst case scenario is I will have to, I'll do a really quick call into myself and try and.
That's much better.
Okay, excellent. Glad to hear it. So the variances that we're asking for are actually to permit an existing condition of an existing home. The home that is there was built quite a few years ago. It's one of the existing homes on that street. The existing home is approximately 1,800 square feet. And as you can see on the existing site plans that were submitted with the city,
Your volume just kicked out again.
sorry Sorry about that. Trying to see if we've got a headset here. But as I mentioned, we are asking for existing conditions.
You're still very garbled, Mr. Mason.
I'm sorry. Would you mind deferring this until the end of the meeting, and I'll try and call back in with a cell phone?
Yeah, we can step this down and make it the last item on the agenda.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll talk to you in a bit. Okay. Now move to item number 5. That's an application at 250 Byron Avenue. And I believe Mr. Donkin is the agent.
Yeah, my client has knowledge of the sign posting.
Yeah.
So he'll need to swear that it's been up.
Well, I'm just going to administer the oath, and then we can proceed with your application. And you are Mr. Donkin?
Yes, but my client has to make the oath.
All right. Is your client there?
He should be. Yes, Mr. Bassoon.
Okay. Mr. Bassoon there?
So
Yeah, hi.
there he is.
All right, Mr. Bassoon, could you give us your address, please?
250 Byron Avenue.
All right. Okay, the oath is, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
You swear? Okay,
Yes.
fine. Thank you, Mr. Bassoon.
You're
All right,
welcome.
Mr. Donkin, are you going to be making the presentation?
Yes.
All right. This application is to permit for minor variances to permit the main door of a newly constructed home not to face the front line and not to face the street, to permit a reduced lot width and reduced corner side yard setback. It is proposed to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a 2-story detached dwelling with a secondary dwelling unit in the basement. So if you'd like to proceed with your application, Mr. Donkin.
Yeah, the first and most difficult variance is the main door, which comes from the infill bylaw. It says that the main door has to face the front of the lot, which is deemed to be the narrowest frontage. So in this case, it would be required to face Byron. We thought it was more appropriate for it to face Kensington. So although the request says it doesn't face the street, it does face a street, Kensington.
Yeah.
We did that for a couple of reasons. One is it takes foot traffic off Byron, which makes it a little bit safer. Allows us a more efficient plan on the house itself. And it's a more desirable address behind Kensington than Byron. The second 2 variances really come from the size of the lot. The lot is 12 meters wide rather than 15 that's required. Another part of the infill bylaw says that the corner side yard has to meet the setback of the adjacent dwelling on the side street. Doing that would reduce the width of the buildable width of the lot to about 20 feet, which would really make it impractical to develop the lot. So we've asked that that side setback on the corner side yard be reduced to 3 meters, which is what the underlying zoning bylaw asks for. The the main issue in terms of its relation to the neighborhood is really at the south end of the property and its relation to the other houses on Kensington. If you could show SK 005, it shows how we've tried to deal with that. We've 005. Further. There we go. So we're keeping an existing garage. It's going to require repair, but it's reparable. And then we pulled the house back as far as we can from the garage and basically took the massing of the house down as we came south. So that's how we're sort of trying to deal with the neighborhood issue.
All right.
In terms of the width of the lot is 12 meters. There are a number of lots nearby that are that small or smaller.
Do you have any lot patterning evidence to support that comment?
Yeah, that would be SK 003. There we go. So that shows the widths of nearby lots.
All right.
The other thing about the reduced corner side yard setback is the 3 meters is actually in line with the existing building. So in that way, it continues the pattern, the existing pattern.
You're aware of the comments from forestry regarding regarding the sugar maple? It's supposedly in decline.
Yeah, it's a really big tree and it is in really, really rough shape. I don't think we would be happy to do everything we can to keep it. In particular, I was talking to Mr. Cutler from the Community Association yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be happy to do what we can to keep it. We're somewhat limited because it's on city property, so I don't know what kind of interventions we can do. We can certainly do the usual, street protection, tree protection. One might be able to extend its life a little bit with an arborist. We'd have to work that out, I think, with the city since it's their tree, but we'd be willing to do so.
Okay. All right. You're aware that Hydro Ottawa's comments regarding maintaining safety offset clearances, I'm assuming?
Yeah, we meet their requirements.
Okay. There were comments from at least one of the neighbors, Mr. Brown, at 447 Kensington, had concerns with parking configuration and congestion. Could you address his concerns, please?
Yeah, we got a couple of comments from him and from 439.
Right.
The problem is one which I don't think we can solve on our site. We're limited to what kind of parking we can provide by the infill bylaw. We can have one entrance that's 8.5 feet wide. The problem they talk about, I think it arises from 432 Byron. Apparently they don't like to use their entrance off Byron, and so they park along Kensington. And there's also a super mailbox just on our site that probably attracts other traffic. The bylaw seems to be designed to, to some degree discourage the use of cars in this part of the city. I can understand their concerns with congestion on the street, but I don't think it's a problem we can solve on our site.
How many parking spaces are you going to be providing on site?
There's one in the garage and there'd be one tandem. So one for each unit.
And the secondary dwelling unit, of course, doesn't require a parking space.
That's right.
All right.
Actually, the principal unit doesn't require one either.
Yeah, well, hard to sell a house in the West End without parking.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. The comments I've got from Mr. Cutler, regard primarily with tree preservation, and I guess there was some concern that there was no community consultation on this, or a lack of community consultation on this. Could you just fill us in on that detail, possibly?
Well, we did contact the councilor and we contacted the community association. The community association came back to us with a set of questions which we answered back in February.
Okay.
And then I spoke to Mr. Cutler yesterday morning after getting his comments on Monday.
Yeah.
And he seemed happy with all the building issues. His main concern seemed to be the trees.
Okay. So you've talked to the immediately adjacent and abutting neighbors?
Yeah, my client spoke to, he tried sort of 5 different houses, managed to speak to 3 of them.
Okay.
And up till yesterday, we had no concerns from any of them. This morning, I got another letter from the house immediately to the south. Their concerns again were the parking, the trees, and they also would like the setback to be equal to their setback, which, as I mentioned, makes development impractical.
Well, the setback that you're going to be providing is approximately what's there right now, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Right. I think we have a request to speak from Mr. Wilder. Mr. Wilder?
Question I have too, the secondary dwelling unit, is this going to be for a family member or is this going to be a rental unit? What are the owner's intentions?
I really don't know. It's obviously set up so it could be for a rental.
So it's not going to be like for an extended family member. It could be a rental.
Not that I'm aware of.
So that rental unit, in fact, if it's going to be a rental unit, may have a vehicle, right?
It could have, yes.
Possibility. Right. The other question, the garage, I understand you're going to be renovating the garage. What type of separation exists now? I can't quite make it out. What type is there going to be a privacy fence between that garage and the Dinnings property next door?
There's actually an existing privacy fence that's well over 6 feet high that the owner of the property to the south put up because the garage, I understand, for quite some time has been a bit of an eyesore. Yeah, you can see the fence there. That's existing.
I see. So that fence will remain. There's
yes.
What is the just curious, the separation between the that side wall of the garage and the fence there? Is it what a meter or?
It looks, I don't know exactly, but it's about 4 feet. The survey would tell me.
I see. What is it, your intention to reclad the garage as part of the renovations?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Duncan, could you address the 4 tests, please?
Yeah. So the first variance, we aren't not providing a door on the street. We're simply providing a door on the second street that the building faces. So I think that makes it minor. It's desirable because it makes it pedestrian traffic on the site is safer. It identifies the house with Kensington. It allows the parking in the main entry to be within the neighborhood. It also increases the efficiency of the building itself. And it also increases the value of the developed property because of the address. Those are why we think it's desirable for appropriate development. General intent, the idea is to blend in with the streetscape, and we think we've done that, by managing the massing of the building and by rolling the entrance around to, the residential street. Byron is pretty rough. When you go to the west of there, it becomes apartments. So we think we're identifying quite well with the with the neighboring streets. And as far as the official plan goes, what we want is the main door is consistent with complementing the existing pattern and scale of the development of the area. For the lot width, we think it's minor because it's a 20% change, and there are other lots nearby that are similar. It doesn't really affect in a significant way how the lot is developed. Aside from the corner side yard, we're still meeting all the requirements, particularly the lot area. So our coverage is what one would expect even without that. Again, in terms of desirable for the appropriate development use, I don't believe it would be possible. Well, we can't make it 15 feet wide, so we can't very well develop it unless we get this variance. In terms of the intent, it'll allow us to provide density, and we still manage to keep the appropriate relation to surrounding properties. And as far as the official plan goes, if we couldn't build on this lot as a narrow lot, then we would not be able to build on it, and we'd avoid the possibility of intensification in the city. This assumes always that the existing house is really not reparable, which I believe is true. And then in terms of the reduced side yard setback, again, we think it's minor because it meets the underlying zoning bylaw. It's desirable because without it, we simply could not develop the lot. The intent and purpose of the bylaw, again, although the setback is less, it still allows us to provide the patterns that the bylaw looks for in blending in with the neighborhood. And again, with the official plan, it allows us to build this building, which provides densification and a variety of dwelling types.
And thank you. Can I hear from staff on this application, please?
Mr. Chair, staff has no concerns with the application with regards to the variance that moves the orientation of the front door to the side. It's more favorable in this case. It will extend the animation of the street, and it's sort of compatible to the patterns across from 250 Byron. With regards to the reduced lot width, it's an existing condition, and other lots in the area are also undersized. And with regards to the reduced corner side yard setback, we have recognized that it is going to be where the house currently exists. So any impact with that reduced setback will be very minimum.
Thank you very much. All right. I notice that there are no conditions being required. So given the presentation, I'm prepared to
Excuse me, Mr.
grant the
Chair?
application.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
We have Mr. Cutler, the neighbor that had wanted to speak as well.
Ah, Mr. Cutler. All right. Please proceed, Mr. Cutler.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. My concerns are not so much with the variances. I don't have a problem with the house facing onto Kensington. That being said, there may be a problem with the placement of the doors, and that's what's with respect to the tree. If we go back to the original schematic that was put up, you'll see a number of trees on the property that are marked, trees marked for saving. The large maple in the front of the house is just marked as a tree. It's not marked for saving. You've been told that the tree is in very rough shape. I did provide a small PowerPoint presentation, which actually shows the condition of the trees. So I don't know if it's possible to put that presentation up. I think it was received. Is it possible to bring that up?
Yes, just one moment and we'll get it up for you.
Okay. Next slide. So that is the tree that is in question. Well, there is some damage to the core trunk. You can see that the branches are extremely healthy. The branches are going upwards. The canopy is fully intact. There were no bare branches, or none that I could spot on that tree. Next slide, please. So that's the same tree that we've been told is near death. I find it hard to believe that that tree is near death. Yes, there may be some internal problems, but that tree appears very healthy. The city of Ottawa told me that one of my trees was near death and it had to be taken down, and it lasted an additional 10 years. And it only came down because some of the branches were growing more perpendicular or parallel to the road, and they hung over the sidewalk along Byron. This tree looks far better shape than many trees in the neighborhood. So we are concerned that this tree could be in jeopardy, particularly since the front door seems to be directly behind this tree. So while we have no problems with the door along Kensington, we want to see the tree saved and wonder whether the configuration of the door and a separate door for a porch along Kensington may add to the risk that the tree might not survive because of the construction that would have to go along there. And I suppose if you want eyes on the street, the porch is not hidden behind a tree, but the front door will be hidden behind a tree. So those are our major concerns. I think the question of the parking, if there's a secondary dwelling in the basement, I think that is an issue that I can understand why the neighbors are concerned. It is a growing issue in this area. And I believe eventually if the city has a policy of putting in new units and additional units and turning singles into semis without addressing the lack of parking, we are going to eventually see that this neighborhood is going to have overnight paid parking similar to the center of the city. But the city has not chosen to address that issue yet. So those are our comments. Except to say, as I said, the tree is the main focus, and as you've probably heard numerous presentations to the Committee of Adjustment, as existing homes are knocked down, and particularly where semis are put in, the urban forest, particularly the mature trees of the urban forest, are greatly at risk. Thank you.
You're also aware, Mr. Cutler, that the tree protection bylaw is on hold.
Yep.
So we don't have one in the city of Ottawa. Now, this is a city tree.
Yes.
And have you had discussions with forestry regarding this tree?
No, I have not.
Okay. Because they apparently are objecting to operations in a critical root zone, which is what would happen during the construction of this new house. But they also state that that could be a better candidate for removal and replacement.
Well, you're replacing that tree with something that's maybe 10 feet tall and will take 50 years to look like that one.
Yeah, if you're lucky, it's 10 feet tall. Mr. Duncan.
If the tree, I could have shown you a tree of my next door neighbors, which is a city tree, which half the branches are bare. And that one clearly will have to come down at some point.
Yeah. Except that you understand that we have no authority when it comes to tree cover.
It's still worth making the point.
It's worth making the point, but we have no authority, as you know. Mr. Duncan.
Well, in this case, you might be able to suggest moving the door along Kensington. That will help preserve the tree. Since there is a request to have the door on Kensington.
I'm assuming they're going to have to dig a new foundation.
That Mr. Donkin would have to answer. I can't.
Well, let's find out from Mr. Donkin and see how the construction will proceed.
Yeah, I would love to keep the tree, and in fact, on our plans we indicate that tree is to be retained.
Okay.
So what we can do about it is we can protect the root area, which the city will require anyway when we get to a site plan.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to need to put in a foundation. If I could see the site plan again, it might clarify things somewhat. So most of the root area of that tree is actually going to be unaffected. Normally what you try to protect is everything underneath the crown. The circle on there is the actual size of the tree. So we will be skimming some off the sort of northeast edge, but the rest of it will stay grass. In terms of the sidewalk itself, if you look at SK008, it shows the relation of the front door to the tree. There we go. So it's not actually facing at the tree. The sidewalk, which is limited to 5 feet wide, 4 feet wide, can't quite remember. It'll run beside the tree. So that'll have some effect on it. But even in that case, if we do precast, we're only going to be going sort of 6 inches into the dirt. So I think we can do what we can in order to preserve it. My impression on site and from the report from forestry is that really the problem is structural, that the entire center is rotting, and they're probably concerned about branches falling off. If that were on our property, we'd be able to tie it together and probably extend its life. I don't know that we would have the clearance to do that from the city, given it's their tree. I don't know that the tree would be willing to do that, although we'd be happy to cooperate with that if it happened. I think that's like, I mean, we like the tree. It's, when you think of, if we're going to be selling this house, a house with a great big beautiful maple tree beside it is highly desirable. So we'll do what we can to keep it up for as long as we can.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to dig out the foundation of the old home that's already on the site?
Yeah, so there'll be an area probably 4 or 5 feet wide beside the existing foundation towards the tree. So it will be somewhat into the root area, but not a long way.
But that foundation, the current foundation is in the root area anyway, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Because the new home is going to be pretty much along the same will have the same foundation line as the current house has.
Yeah, the only thing is that in order to excavate it, you know, to keep people safe, we have to take it out about 4 feet so we can get the formwork in and things. But the foundation will stay where it is now.
All right. That's an absolute necessity to go out 4 feet towards the street?
It's a call that has to be made by the contractor. It depends on the nature of the soil, and it depends on the safety of the workers. So if you had extremely loose soil, then they'd have to go back at 45 degrees, which would probably take them 5 feet or so.
Yep.
If you've got really dense soil, then you may be able to do it at a steeper angle. And as far as the excavation goes, the less dirt you move, the less it costs you. So the tendency on the part of the contractor would be to keep his excavation tight to the foundation.
So this could be done possibly with minimal impact to the existing tree.
We'll minimize the impact insofar as we can.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Wildman, you had a question?
In light of the comments from the delegation and from the owner agent and the willingness to want to preserve the tree, it would seem to me fairly easy to add a condition that says that the owner shall coordinate construction activities in a manner satisfactory to the City of Ottawa's forestry services. I take it from your comments that you really wouldn't have any objection to that. Would that be correct?
No, that would be fine. I've discussed it with my client previously, and he's good with that.
Well, from what I've heard, I don't see any issue with perhaps adding a condition like that. It would be a shame to lose a tree that may have a chance to survive. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'd be looking for a condition like that if my committee colleagues were.
I'm certainly in favor of that, Mr. Wildman. The rest of the members?
Sounds fine to me.
I wonder just about the practicality of a condition that deals with city property. That would be my concern.
I guess Forestry Services has already expressed a concern and they have the ability to regulate. I think the condition that we would be looking for is one that indicates that the construction practices would be in a manner that meets with the approval of forestry services. Forestry would be making the final call on what can happen in that regard. So I don't see that would necessarily be a problem, because if forestry decides one way or the other, it's their decision, and they are the representatives of the city with respect to the tree on city property. So, they could decide that we have that condition, and they could decide that nothing has to be done. And at that point in time, it would still meet the intent of the condition. So at any rate, I think it behooves us to try to save the tree, especially in light of the fact that we have a proponent who seems very willing to use best efforts to do so.
I think that's a worthy condition to add.
I'd be happy with that.
We'll have Mr. Wildman word it. I think he has some experience with this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cutler. So we'll see if we can save a tree without a bylaw.
Yeah,
anyway, so with that being said, and with that condition being attached, all in favor of the application for 250 Byron Avenue?
I'm going to dissent on the condition, but approve the construction.
Okay, it's noted that Ms. McLean dissents on the condition, but approves approves of variances A, B, and C. Okay, everybody else is in approval? All right, with that one dissent on the condition, the application is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Donkin, good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
We're going to proceed with item 8 on the agenda, 83 and 85 Rosemount Avenue. I need to get a declaration sworn by the applicant or the agent.
Mr. Chairman, how are you?
I'm good, Mr. Hume. Yourself?
I'm very good.
All right. To begin this process, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
You do swear? All right.
I swear.
This application is for minor variances to permit reduced lot widths. It is proposed to demolish the existing dwelling and construct 2 long semi-detached dwellings with 1 dwelling on each of the newly created parcels of land. Consent to subdivide the property into 2 parcels of land is also being applied for. So if you'd like to proceed, Mr. Hume.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of committee. You'll recall that I appeared before you on March the 4th requesting a deferral of this application. I didn't expect to be back before you in June, but events have intervened. I appeared on the 4th to seek a deferral so that we could appear at a community meeting on March the 10th. We did appear at that community meeting, and I will share with you the outcomes of the community meeting a little later in the presentation. The picture on your screen in front of you is the house at 83 Rosemount. If you can go to the next slide, we'll give you the other side. There you go. And there is the side yard and the rear yard of the of the property. The underlying zoning bylaw is an R4K zone, which allows a 7.5 meter lot width and 197 square meter lot area for single detached dwellings in this zone. We are seeking to construct 2 long semi-detached buildings in this zone, and therefore we require relief from section 139 of the mature communities overlays, which requires a 10 meter lot width on for each of the lots. And we are proposing lot width of 9.135 meters. If you could go to the next. So that's just to give you some perspective. That's where the property is. It's between Gladstone and the 417. Connet School is up and to your left. It's approximately 50 meters from the intersection of Gladstone and Rosemount, and 125 meters from the dead end. So that should situate you in where the property is located. So if we could go to the next slide, which is the reference plan. The reference plan shows you the parcels that are being severed and the parts that will become reciprocal easements. So it's part 1 and 3 with a reciprocal easement of part 4, and parts 4 and 2 with reciprocal easements to part 3. So if we can go to the next slide.
Is your signal strength fairly strong, Mr. Hume? Because we lost you there.
It should be fine. I will, I can move a little closer if that helps. So this is the original site plan that was filed with the application. You can see the outlines of the buildings to be demolished. You can see the 2 long semi-detached dwellings and the 2 parking spaces in the rear. At the request of the community association, we added 4 trees, 2 in the front and 2 in the rear. And so this was the application that we went before to the public meeting with. At the public meeting, there were 2 real schools of thought. One of them was they liked the application, they liked the parking arrangements, and they wanted us to plant the trees, specify the calipers, and show them on our plan, which we did. We had another group of residents who were very concerned that we weren't providing more parking for the long semi-detached dwellings. And in order to undertake due diligence to make sure that we're transparent with the committee, we did look at that. And I'm prepared to show that to you now. It's, although we can accommodate it, it's probably, unless it's a real desire of the community to have us undertake this, it's probably not the optimal solution. So if you want to go to the next. So as you can see, the parking starts to dominate the rear yard. It's not something that we filed with the committee, but this was an outcome of the public consultation, and we thought it fair to share it with you. So when we look at the, if you want to go to the next slide. So these are some pictures, some renderings of the 2 long semi-detached dwellings sharing the a single driveway. You can go to the next one. So when we started to look at the street fabric, we undertook a streetscape character analysis, and we started to look at how many similar type lots and lot fabrics, there were. And in fact, when we looked at and canvassed the street from Gladstone to the dead end, there were approximately 10 lots of the 25 lots in total that were in the 9-meter width with varying driveway degrees from 2.9 meters to 4.5 meters wide. So we're adopting a very similar lot fabric to what exists on the street today. And we can go to the next slide. And that is an example of the streetscape that you get the narrow 9-meter lot with the shared driveway leading to parking in the rear. So that is the sum of my presentation. The variances really are minor. The variance is minor in nature. It has no adverse impacts on the abutting property. It is fairly distinctive with respect. It is not distinctive with respect to the streetscape. So we believe that it meets the intent of the general intent of the zoning bylaw. These are two purpose built rental properties. So and the semi-detached portions are family style 3-bedroom units. So the variance is desirable and it meets the general intent of the official plan. So if we could go to the next slide, I just wanted to show you what's across the street from us to give you some context. So when we looked at the streetscape, we've taken some time to make sure that the lot fabric is, that we've taken some time to look at the lot fabric. This is what we'll look at across the street. So which is something that we don't want to replicate and we don't think is particularly demonstrative of what we should be aspiring to. And Mr. Chair, I do have a concern about one of the conditions which we can address when you get to them.
Okay. You're aware of the comments from the Hintonburg Community Association?
I am.
They have no objections and they're encouraging the owner to ensure that there are more than minimum number of bicycle spaces, parking spaces indoors and out.
Yes, understood.
I don't know how you've addressed that with them. And then they're also concerned about the location of any installed air conditioning units and the noise impact on neighbors.
We haven't identified where those air conditioning units will be because we have not advanced the mechanical portion of the semi-detached dwellings at this time. But they will be in conformity to the zoning bylaw for sure.
Is there going to be a privacy fence around the rear of the property on the north, south, and west side, east side, sorry?
Just let me go back to the site plan. We are not showing a privacy fence in that context, but we certainly can look at installing fencing to, we certainly can look at that.
Yeah, one thing a solid wall fence does is mitigate noise from AC units, and the other thing is with your proposed parking in the rear, you've got spillover headlight coming into people's backyards, and quite frankly, I don't think I'd be happy to have that happening to me. So I think a solid privacy fence would be a good neighbor approach to development, don't you think?
Absolutely.
And I think that's something you should consider. I note that there are conditions. The 56 centimeter Manitoba maple in the front yard is, I guess, it's on the right side of your property, south side of the property.
That's correct.
Is that going to be coming down?
Yes, it is. We've already been in touch with forestry We've had a tree expert go out and look at the tree, assess its condition. We've shared those reports with forestry, and we've applied for a distinctive tree permit application. And forestry has advised us that they're just waiting on our building permit application, and they'll approve that application. We've agreed to plant the 2 trees in the front and 2 trees in the back. And they've agreed that if we do that, they're going to waive our requirements for deposits. I think it's a $700 deposit that we would have to provide.
So you're removing 1 mature tree and replacing it with 4 somewhat less mature trees.
Yes, we are.
All right. Okay. Hydro Ottawa comments that there's a need for a relocation of the existing overhead and that you have to maintain your safety clearances.
Yes.
That's something you have to deal with them. And the Ministry of Transportation for Ontario's comments regarding approvals and permits required prior to construction and or demolition of any buildings and or structures because you're within that distance from their highway.
We've already applied for those permits and received, I understand we've received a positive response from them.
Okay. And as far as conditions are concerned, there's a cash in lieu condition of parkland, existing dwelling removed, services capped, independent services confirmed, accessory structure demolished or relocated. There'll be a need for a joint use or maintenance agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, grading and drainage plan, and I'm assuming that you're objecting to number 7, which is a noise study. So if you please make your.
You're correct, Mr. Chairman. The requirement for a noise study, this is a dead end street. It's very quiet to begin with. If we saw value in conducting a noise study, we would certainly do so. But expending $4,500 to be told that we're going to require air conditioning, put a notice on lease, and make sure that we have double pane windows doesn't seem to be a good use of funds, and doesn't really, we believe, we're not sure that it's required in this location. Certainly, if it was on Woodruff Avenue, where it's an arterial roadway, you should be having that provided to the city. But in this urban location, we don't think it's required.
Is the city concerned with this because of your proximity to Gladstone?
We're not sure why they're concerned, but even the proximity to Gladstone, it's a 4-way stop. It's a 2-lane roadway. Abutting a school, it really is. And it's really what we're going to get out of it. We're going to have air conditioning on these units. We're going to have windows, and we will put a notice on the leases, because this is a rental property, that there could be noises. Having a $4,500 study confirm those requirements, which are the requirements that you would get if we did this study on, say, as an example, I've just completed one on Woodruff Avenue. Those were the recommendations. So we're going to do all of those. I don't think we need to spend $4,500 to be told that that's what we should do. We're just going to do it. So.
And staff comment on the need for this noise study?
Mr. Chair, the noise study is required because the proposal is within 500 meters of the highway. As per the official plan on section 4.8.7, it is stated that if there is a noise sensitive development happening within that 500 meters of the right of way of a 400 level provincial highway, a noise study will be required. It's not because Gladstone is the next street, it's because of the highway.
Okay. Maybe I can ask you, Mr. Hume, you're familiar with the street, you've been on it a few times. Is there not a noise wall built along the 417 at that point?
Absolutely, there is at the end. Not only that, there's houses between us and them, us and the roadway. And in fact, if I'm not wrong, as I walk down that roadway, there are 2 apartment buildings that are between us and them. So I'm not, I understand what I can appreciate what they're trying to protect. I just don't think it's really in this situation a requirement.
Okay. All right. Mr. Wildman has a question.
So I heard the comments from staff and I heard the comments from Mr. Hume, and having been somewhat involved in the approval of noise studies in the past, I would lean towards what Mr. Hume was saying, in the sense of, yes, a study could be done, and in all probability, the only findings that it would have would be the 3 things that Mr. Hume has indicated, that being, satisfactory window, and air conditioning, and some form of a warning clause. There's nothing else that could be done. I'm not supportive of a condition like that. However, I would, in return for that coming out, would like to see those other 3 requirements reflected in the conditions.
Absolutely, we're fine with that.
So these other conditions, Mr. Wildman, would be what again?
That there would be a noise warning clause on title, even though they will be leased, and a requirement to include them in leases. A requirement for double pane windows and central air conditioning.
Can you be happy with that, Mr. Hume?
Yes, I am.
All right. Ms. McLean.
I just might mention that if we don't impose the noise study condition, the city has in the past sometimes appealed the decision. So that's a risk that the applicant's agent must understand, that the city could appeal the decision. I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, I can appreciate that. I think it would be, yes, we understand the risk.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from members of the panel?
Chair, I go back to your suggestion regarding the fence at the rear of the property. Is there a way that we can include that as a condition?
Mr. Chairman, I'll take that away. There's a little bit of a challenge because there's grade differentials as we move to the back, and I wouldn't want to promise that I could build a fence. I may be able to do plantings. I'm just not sure what type of fencing I'm going to be able to put in there at this point, because when I've been in at the back, and I may have pictures, you can see that there's a bit of a difference between the properties to the, I want to say to the east of this property. So we will try to install, we will do our best to install, and maybe if you want us to make best efforts, we can. I'm just not sure I can promise you that we will be able to do it without either affecting our neighbor's property in some negative way.
I'm assuming that those vehicles are not going to back in and drive out. Drive in and back out. There's no place to turn around.
No, yes, so that they're gonna have to turn around in that space. So the grade, and I'm just gonna pull up, if you I'm just going to see if I can get my grading plan up, and I can tell you what the changes are for, here we go. Yeah, I mean, so right now, the grading plan, there's a change. And we're proposing a retaining wall along the back of those with a guardrail because of the grade changes between the properties.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I could see if we could make best efforts at this point to put some sort of fencing on top of that, on top of the retaining wall. And the retaining wall runs from the back, almost the rear of the units, all the way around the back of the property. So if I can put,
Frankly, I don't think it's terribly desirable to have somebody's headlights lighting up their neighbor's rear yard.
So there's a retaining wall that runs along the back of the property, and it is, so we're lower, they're higher. So, and I'm just trying to look to see if I can find that the retaining wall, how high that retaining wall is. It's yeah, I don't have that at close hand, but if your concern is with the lighting and the parking in the back, we certainly can try to put something on top of those, some sort of fencing on top of that, the retaining walls that are going to go around the property. Right now they're guardrails, so I'm assuming that there's a bit of a differential between our property and our abutting neighbors. Just how much that is, I don't know. So,
well,
Mr. Chair?
I think it would be good practice to install a privacy fence at least across the back of the property to prevent spillover lighting from the vehicles that are going to be parked in the rear yard. I take it there's no vehicle parking in the rear yard right now?
No, because there's if you can go back to look at one of the pictures I showed you, there's a building in the backyard.
Yeah.
So it's quite a so I mean, we can endeavor to undertake that. I mean, I just can't promise you that I can do it. It depends on what I can put on top of the retaining walls.
Mr. Wildman, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was looking at one of the slides Mr. Hume had submitted. I guess it would be probably the best one is the third slide when you're looking down the driveway. There's a garage and a mishmash of other structures back there, sheds of some sort. And then behind that, raised what looks to be about 5 or maybe a little bit higher, 5 feet, is some sort of a white structure. Mr. Hume, is that another garage? What is that structure?
That's actually hard to know what it was. It looks to be an office on or workshop space on top and garage along the I want to say the an extension of the garage along the left-hand side of the property. You see the 2 silver doors?
Yeah.
The garage goes in, and this is built sort of attached over top of it. it was some sort of office space at the time.
So the garage won't be there though in the future, correct?
What's that?
That garage will not be there in the future.
No, none of that will be there in the future.
But the white building, the structure that's situated higher will be there?
No.
No, it will not be there.
Right.
I agree with the chair. You know, if there was a way to get some sort of a screen in there, I think it's probably a reasonable request. I appreciate that, you know, design is not advanced that far, but I'm not sure how to get to where the chair wants to get to, but I agree that some form of screening would be beneficial.
I think all we have to do is impose a condition that the proper fencing is built along the rear property line to prevent spillover lighting from vehicles that are parking in the rear yard. Period.
And I, you know, I,
my mind, it's a
that I think that's a good condition. I just don't know the grading conditions, so it's hard for me to say that that's going to work for sure. I mean, certainly if it does work, I would be very supportive of that.
Yeah.
So if I could ask that there's a series of retaining walls that are going to go on top of the on around the back and sides of the rear yards. So it really comes, so they come along the back and along the sides, and so that they come up beside the two units. So really whatever is on top of, so if we could say that we would endeavor to ensure that the combination of a retaining wall and any other measures to reduce the spillover lighting.
I think the word is eliminate, Mr. Hume.
Eliminate spillover lighting. I'm fine with that. So.
Okay, so that would be a condition that says either a combination of a retaining wall / fence.
Yeah, barrier.
Or other measures that would eliminate spillover lighting from the rear yard parking spaces into neighboring properties to the east of 83 Rosemount.
Okay, yep.
You're okay with that?
I would guess that I should be okay with it, yes.
Yeah, well, you may have to be okay with it.
Yes, I'm getting that feeling. So
regarding the noise study, I agree with Mr. Wildman. I really don't see the need for a full-bore noise study, and that if we impose conditions for noise warnings on title for the tenants, the double pane windows and central air, that is more than sufficient, given the fact that there's a noise wall in the 417, 125 meters to the south.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Wilder, you had a comment?
Let's see here. Can you hear me? Okay. I would agree with that. Absolutely. I think with that noise barrier along the Queensway and there's several houses in between, double pane windows, absolutely. I don't see the need for the noise study. It's my comment.
Okay. So if we approve this, Mr. Hume, it'll be tied to plans filed, and they'll have to be as amended because it's going to show your structure at the rear of your property to prevent lighting spillover into the yards at 94 and 96 Sherbrooke.
Right. Understood.
Okay. All right. Given the discussions we have had, I'm prepared to accept this or to grant the application as amended. Is there anything else that has to get mentioned here? No, all the other members in favor of the application as amended? A show of hands. Everybody okay? All right. Your application is approved. Good luck with your project, Mr. Hume.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. We tried dealing with item 464 Denbury. See if we have the sound issues resolved.
Mute. Hello.
Mr. Mason, I can hear you.
Excellent. Glad that it worked out this time.
You may not want to hear us.
Well, I've been listening to the other ones. We might have some struggles here.
Yeah. All right. Before we begin, you have to solemnly declare on the sign. So
absolutely.
I'll just read this to you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear.
You do swear. All right. That's out of the way. Okay. This application is for minor variances for reduced rear and front yard setback and reduced rear yard area to permit the construction of a new two-story detached dwelling. The existing one-story dwelling will be demolished.
Yes.
All right. If you would like to proceed, Mr. Mason.
Absolutely. So now that you guys can hear me, I can move forward.
You can hear you. I can hear you just fine. I think everybody else can hear you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So as mentioned, we are asking for relief from the setbacks for the front yard and the rear yard, which is of a corner lot property with the corner side yard acting as the entrance to the home. So as you can understand, what that does for a property is it changes the dynamic of the front yards and rear yards. The existing home that is there is an 1,800 square foot bungalow that protrudes into the rear yard, reducing the rear yard setback from 7.5 to 1.27 meters at the smallest point. And from the front yard, it reduces the requirement of 6 meters to 4.83 at the closest point to Byron Avenue. That is just the nature of the lot, is that it's a parallelogram and the home itself is a square, as you can see in the plans. Looking at the existing site plan, you'll notice how it lines up in the lot, and you'll also notice in the proposed site plan that the proposed home is actually being built adhering to all of the existing setbacks of the home. So we aren't protruding any further into any of those setbacks than the existing conditions. This was done purposefully in order to attempt to minimize any change to the streetscape and the effect of the properties around it. The only difference between there is a slight perimeter change to the new building than there is from the existing building, and we will be putting a second story on the bungalow in order to just increase the livable space for the homeowners. In doing so, we did make sure that we limited the glazing that's facing both neighboring properties, both 714 Byron and 474 Denbury. We've limited the glazing in those areas, and there will be a perimeter fence. There is one that's existing, and we will be either reinstalling or maintaining the existing fence of the property to again shield any overlook onto the neighboring properties.
We got some elevations of the proposed dwelling put up, please. Okay.
So there you go. So as you can see, that's the overall look of the property. It's maintaining the style, sort of a transitional, but still, classic styling of the home. the neighborhood. Other areas, as I mentioned in the cover letter, are composed of bungalows, single family, 2-story detached homes, all different kinds in that area. In fact, the neighboring property at 474 Denbury is very similar in size, and maintains about the same amount of lot coverage.
And all of these variances reflect an existing condition.
Exactly. All the variances are reflecting an existing condition. We aren't asking for any further relief for this property.
And I note that, well, Forrester, you said that 4 trees may be impacted.
Absolutely. And if you look at the site plan,
project.
Yep. And if you look at the site plan, I did speak back and forth with Jason Chickwin at the city, who is, I believe, the forestry advisor on this, and actually had him go and look at a few of the trees in that at that property ahead of time to let us know how what his opinion was on it. We did a tree declaration for him, a tree disclosure report, and sent that to him, commenting on the trees that he's specifically mentioning, and told him that we would be installing modified protection. We have no intention of removing any of the existing mature trees, and do intend to install modified protection around them. In the tree disclosure report, which may have actually been submitted with the minor variance. I'm not sure if it has it. I might have done that, knowing that these comments would come out. But we did speak with him about installing protection in the areas that may be affected by the excavation of the new foundation.
Yeah, how far out from the foundation wall are you going to be excavating?
So again, it's determined mainly by the contractor in charge of that, but I believe that the standard is 4 feet. In the tree disclosure report that we sent to him, there was actually a requirement to note the limit to excavation, which I noted on the plans to him, which is why he is aware of which trees may or may not be affected by it.
Okay. All right. Staff is in concurrence with this application, I take it?
Yes, Mr. Chair, staff has no concerns with the proposal.
There are no conditions that have been requested. There are no comments from neighbors, or any comments at all from the local community association, Mr. Mason?
No, we actually did individual visits to the neighboring properties to discuss the project. Nobody found any concerns with it, and everyone seemed to be in favor of the project. So no concerns there.
Okay. So you did your due diligence and talked to all the adjacent and immediately abutting neighbors.
Absolutely.
All right. And just briefly, how does this project meet the requirements of the 4 tests?
Absolutely. So as I noted in the cover letter that is there, we aren't, the application is minor in nature in that we are conforming to existing conditions that are already on the property, and not asking for any further relief in the setbacks. The size and scale is consistent with other properties in the neighborhood, and we aren't affecting any major trees or distinctive trees, and any that are to be affected are to be protected throughout the process. It's desirable for development of the land. It is already a single family home. We are maintaining it as a single family home. There is no additional dwelling units being in place or in-law suites being developed for this property. So it is just a single family home. So it is remaining desirable. The general intent and purpose, again, it is an existing structure that is there. In terms of overlook on the properties, we are maintaining the existing spacing between the dwellings, the immediate adjacent dwellings, and are taking into account privacy, density, light, and etc. We are not within the 6 meter site triangle from the corner of the corner lot, which is a concern with corner lots. We aren't getting any closer, and nor are we within it in our development. So I believe that answers the four points.
All right. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Any of the members have any questions or comments on this application? Are we prepared to grant the application as applied for?
Yes.
All in favor? All right. Your application is granted, Mr. Mason. Good luck with your project.
Thank you for giving me the chance to speak.
Save those trees.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. Thank you. All right. We will now deal with items 6 and 7 on the agenda. 62 York Street and 35 William Street. And again, we need to swear the oath regarding the sign postings. So if the applicant, if the agent would, or applicant would kindly identify themselves.
Yes, Mr. Chair, our client can swear the oath.
All right. And who am I speaking to?
I am Colleen Ibbets, the planner with Holzman Consultants and agent for the applicants of 62 York and 35 William. But our client, Dominic Santaguida, is able to swear the oath.
Are you there, Mr. Santaguida? Is the client there?
No, it could be Alex Miner. Can you hear me?
Yeah. And who am I speaking with?
Dominic Santaguida.
Okay, I have an oath for you to swear, and then we'll continue with this application. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I swear.
Thank you. All right, we can get on with the application. This was an adjourned application, which is coming back hopefully with the joint use and maintenance agreement and a spatial separation analysis that was undertaken. So with that said, would the agent kindly proceed with their application?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Colleen Ibbets once again. We also have Danny Fernandez, the solicitor for our clients, also on the line. Again, please note that I'll be speaking to both the application for the lot line adjustment at 62 York and the application for rights of way over 35 William as they work together in the proposed redevelopment.
Okay.
So just to begin, we have reviewed all comments received to date on these applications and are satisfied with them. In particular, we agree with planning staff that a plan of subdivision is not required. The consent process is the most appropriate method to facilitate the objectives of these applications because the lands in question have and will continue to have access to existing municipally maintained streets. No new municipal infrastructure will be required, and no new lots are being created. We also believe that the Building Code Services comments regarding the limiting distance issue can be addressed through the building permit stage, and that the new walls will be built as fire separations with fire resistance. So looking more specifically to the purpose of these applications, our client's proposal is to facilitate the redevelopment of 3537 William, which were destroyed by a fire in 2019. Moving to slide 3, the lot line adjustment is proposed to add lands to the 3537 William properties from the rear of 62 York as part of a proposed 4-story mixed-use redevelopment. We're currently going through the site plan approval and minor rezoning processes for this proposal, and that the applications have been deemed complete, and we are also working on a response to the first round of comments. Therefore, we don't require any minor variances. So moving to slide 4, however, as a result, the retained lands at 62 York require rear emergency egress rights-of-way from the basement and second floors, hence the consent application for the associated rights-of-way over 35 William. Please note that the rear emergency egress from the ground floor of 62 York is through an existing right-of-way over 87 George. So we also want to note that 35 William has an existing right-of-way over 54 York, which is also referred to as Feathers Lane. These blue and red highlighted diagrams are the ground level parts of the stratified draft R plan. Moving through slides 5 and 6, we can also see the other stratified parts, including the stairwells. That said, we can return to slide 4 for the remainder of the presentation. So overall, it's our professional planning opinion that these applications for consent are most appropriate, and that the lot line adjustment and rights-of-way are defensible land use planning. But please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for your time.
Okay. I think there are some questions. Ms. McLean, I believe, had some.
I guess with the first application for 62 York, can you just take me through the sequence? I'm thinking that the lot line adjustment, the lands are going to be conveyed to the William Street property. I'm just not clear how those grants of easements are being given by the applicant 62 York if they've sold the land to the William Street property.
Our solicitor, Danny Fernandez, is also on the line to speak to the more legal aspects.
So thanks. So the question in terms of, I believe we have to convey Heather, the right-of-way on Feathers Lane in order to create the emergency exit. So there's going to be a creation of the easements beforehand, then the conveyance of the corrected sort of lot line adjustment, as it were, so that we have the proper parties in granting the easement, so that we have a party to and a party from that is different.
So can you just take me through that again? I wasn't sure that there was a right-of-way over Feathers Lane. I'm just
So Feathers Lane. So right now, 62 York, as it now stands, does not have that emergency exit over Feathers Lane. So 35 William is the only one that has that access. So we're going to give 62 the right, like when it has the entire piece before the back piece gets conveyed, it's going to get that ground floor access. If you can show in when you had, sorry, Cindy, if you can, not that one. So when you convey that portion, that will then allow 62 to be entitled to an easement over Feathers Lane before we convey the back piece. Okay. Once we've conveyed that, now when 62 York conveys that remainder lot line adjustment piece 235, we then have the capability of granting the remaining easements in the application directly to 62 York.
So what part number is that, the right of way that we're looking at right now? And that's a surface right of way, it's on the land?
That's the surface right of way, correct.
And do we know what part number that? I'm just trying to relate it to the application, because that would be on the William Street application. Am I wrong there?
So that, so the easement, so what the easement I'm talking about, sorry, I apologize, is the actual right of way that is the essentially the current rectangular piece that 35 currently enjoys.
That we're looking at on this plan?
Yes, the rectangular one.
And that's a surface, it's on the land, and what part number is that as part of these applications?
No, what I meant is that's part of the 54 York's land, of which, so that easement is already granted in favor of 35. The person the property owner that does not have that right yet is 62 York. So we are just from a processing point of view, so that you can wrap it all up. I need to convey an already existing easement in favor of 62 York of that rectangular piece. That's what's going to bind the entire thing to allow the sort of fork-like section that you see on the screen to then allow the emergency exit for 62 York on the ground level.
So do we not need an application by the owner of 54 York to grant that?
No, because it's already an existing easement, Heather, and so you can put a condition that that easement be granted prior to and us evidence that, because that can occur before any of the other easements or lot line adjustments are done, because it's already an existing easement and we have the consent of the owner of 54 York already, so that won't be an issue to produce as a precondition of satisfying all the conditions.
But the owner of 54 York it's an existing easement for the benefit of the William Street property?
That's correct. Yes. So,
but not for the York Street property.
That's correct. And so they're going to add them as an additional grant E.
And you don't need a consent for that?
No, because it's already an existing easement. Yes.
Okay.
So we're happy to provide that as a condition of the application.
But the new fork-like easement is part of the application for the William Street property?
That is correct. Yes.
But what about the easements, rights of ways that are on the York Street property? They're being
there are none on the York Street property. All easements, both the on the other slides, are all within the 35, 37. Once the lots have been merged, essentially the lighter red have been merged.
So the notice, Mr. Fernandez, that we have for York Street says the easements rights of way. So it talks about severing the landlocked parcel, and then goes on to ask for easements rights of ways over parts 3 and 5 on the said plan.
Yes.
So York Street is granting these parts 3 and 5?
No, 35 is granting it in favor of York Street.
So I'm not sure these applications maybe are framed correctly, but I'll just let Ms. Evans maybe go on and explain maybe what these parts 3 and 5 are, where they are on the plan, and that, if she could.
Yes. So looking at the draft plan, there's the ground level, which is what we've been using with all of these blue and red diagrams. But next to that on this draft plan is the parts that are in the basement. So that is where part 3 is located, and part 5 is on the second floor, which is basically a path to the stairwell, which is showing up as that fork shape on the ground level of our blue and red diagrams.
So sorry, I understand your question. My apologies. So what we're saying is it's reserved. So 62 York, in doing the lot line adjustment, yes, they're conveying the back piece, but they're going to reserve, their easement back, okay, in order to allow their continued access over 3 and 5. So
Okay.
3 and 5 are located within the parcel that is being conveyed by 62 York to 35, William.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry for not understanding your original concern.
Any other panel members have questions, comments? Back when this was originally adjourned, there was a requirement for a joint use and maintenance agreement. I'm assuming that has been done, that has been written.
No, that would be it would be part of the conditions of as part and parcel of what we have to do to satisfy the
spatial separation analysis would also be part of the conditions that has to be undertaken.
Correct.
All right. Okay. All right. So Ms. Evans, is there anything else you would like to add to the to your comments?
Not at this time, but if there are any questions remaining, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions remaining from the members of the panel? Okay, and the city staff's position on this on behalf of the department?
Mr. Chair, the department has no concerns with both applications.
All right. I think myself and other members of this panel would like to reserve on this application, folks, so we can further discuss what's been presented to us. And if the members of the rest of the members of the panel are in agreement, we will we'll reserve the application.
Agreed.
All in favor?
Yeah, I agree.
All right. All right, we're going to thank you very much for your presentation, ladies and gentlemen. And the committee will reserve reserve its decision, and you'll receive the decision within 10 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes the hearing for June 3rd, 2020.